Are we going to be able to see the full ascendancies?
Don't know whether that's in the spoiler list or not, actually.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Welcome to another video, and the countdown to launch continues. We're just 3 days away. In this one, I wanted to do a bit of discussion on another kind of concept or build basis that I've been considering starting on launch day, and that's a Corrupting Cry Warbringer. So first, I'm going to go over the Warbringer Ascendancy together with the Corrupting Cry support gem and look at the synergy there, and then I'll cover some of the passive tree nodes that will work really well in this type of build. And at the end of the video, I'll discuss what a potential Corrupting Cry 6 link would look like, and how you go about getting supplementary damage into this type of build. Okay, so the Warbringer is a warrior ascendancy, and so far, these are the notables that we know about. The nodes we're interested in for this build concept are Warcrawler's Bellow and Greatwolf's Howl, but Jade Heritage is an interesting guard skill-like option, and we'll also discuss Answered Call briefly at the end of the video. Firstly, let's talk about the most important node on here, Greatwolf's Howl, which makes you ignore Warcry cooldowns. Now, at the launch of Early Access, I believe that there'll only be 2 Warcries to choose from, Seismic Cry and Infernal Cry, both of which have an 8-second cooldown. The default behaviour of Warcries is typically to empower the usage of a follow-up attack, but we're not too interested in that, because we want to focus on Corrupting Cry, a support gem which makes the supported Warcry inflict corrupted blood on all enemies in its radius. The corrupted blood debuff inflicted in this way doesn't have base damage that scales from the gem like it did in PoE1. Instead, it's scaled from your strength, and deals 10% of your strength as physical damage per second for 5 seconds. Now, in PoE1, corrupted blood is a stacking, non-ailment damage over time debuff. It stacks up to 10 by default, and the duration of all current stacks are refreshed when a new one is applied. We currently don't know if that's still going to be the case for PoE2, but those are the existing mechanics for PoE1. Now, on the choice of Warcries between Seismic and Infernal, both have the same base radius, but Seismic Cry has a few extra properties which make it the superior choice for this type of setup. Firstly, it has a knockback component, which can be extremely useful considering getting surrounded is a very real threat in PoE2. Additionally, Seismic Cry also deals a hit of physical damage at the moment that it goes off, which means it can trigger on-hit effects such as Cutting Strike, which may be useful. Okay, so the basic concept then is Seismic Cry supported by Corrupted Cry support combined with Greatwolf's Howl. But what support is there on the passive skill tree for this type of build? Since Warcry cooldowns are bypassed by Greatwolf's Howl, we're not interested in Warcry cooldown recovery rate stats, but we do want Warcry speed, which will allow us to use Warcries much faster. We're also looking to stack a lot of strength too, since that scales the base damage of Corrupting Cry. For strength, all of the highway attribute nodes can be selected for strength unless you need some dexterity or intelligence for support gems or gear. Beef is back in PoE2 and it provides plus 25 to strength. That will be a useful notable to pick up. There's also the Titanic notable on the outer edge of the tree, providing 5% increased strength, among a few other useful stats there. And of course, the big one, located at the bottom of the tree on the outer edge, is Polymathy, providing 10% increased attributes. Meanwhile, for Warcry specific boosts, Guttural Roar grants 30% increased Warcry speed, and also makes Warcries have 30% increased area effect, which is very useful considering the 30% less AoE modifier on Corrupting Cry support. Urgent Call provides some instant recovery on Warcry usage, which will be useful, and another chunk of increased Warcry speed. And then we have these 2 nodes. Escalation, which grants 25% increased Warcry speed and 15% increased damage for each time you've Warcried recently, and Deafening Cries, which grants 8% increased damage for each time you've Warcried recently. Together, they'd grant 23% increased damage for every Warcry you've used in the last 4 seconds, which is generally quite good, but there's something to mention about this stat. It grants generic increased damage, which is very important for another notable on the Warbringer Ascendancy, Warcrawler's Bellow, which explodes corpses in your presence when you Warcry, dealing 25% of their life as physical damage. This corpse explosion damage is extremely hard to scale, but it will be affected by the generic increased damage gained from Escalation and Deafening Cry, which will substantially improve your clear speed. Okay, let's look at what a Corrupting Cry damage link would look like with support gems that we currently know about. So we have Seismic Cry linked to Corrupting Cry, of course, and then the most important support gem in the link is Hourglass support, which is actually 50% more damage now, or it was at the time when I played on the 8th of November. The downside of this support gem adds cooldown to the skill, but since we ignore the cooldowns of Warcries, this support is pure upside. Then Brutality for 35% more physical damage. The downsides of this support gem are not important because we're only dealing physical damage with this skill. Then Swift Affliction, which may or may not be a good choice due to the less duration component. It depends if Corrupted Blood refreshes existing stack duration like it did in PoE1 or not. And the last link could be something like increased area effect, for example, if AoE is an issue, or more duration if Corrupted Blood stacks don't refresh like they do in PoE1. Now, in terms of other things that you could do in this kind of build concept for supplementary damage, you can look at melee totems such as Ancestral Warrior Totem, as they have their own base damage, which means you can focus on crafting a stat stick mace to boost the damage of Corrupted Blood, if those types of modifiers exist. Additionally, the generic damage increases from the tree notables will boost the damage of your totems too. We know that the first node in what appears to be a totem-themed branch on the Warbringer, Answered Call, summons ancestral spirits when you summon a totem, so going in this direction should allow you to have quite a lot of passive damage that's just going off while you're able to freely reposition and use your Warcries. There's also the Encased in Jade skill, which looks like quite a useful option as a reactive guard skill ability to be able to tank larger hits. Defensively, a build like this should feel quite nice because you have a good chunk of extra life coming from strength, and as I mentioned before, there also shouldn't be too much time required standing in place, so you should be quite free to move around and dodge dangerous incoming hits. And we're still missing 5 full notables from the Warbringer Ascendancy. That's crazy. There's so many possibilities there on what those could be. But that's pretty much it. I just wanted to go over something I was looking into as it looks quite good. But one of the big questions for me is how much strength you'll be able to reach, because we don't know just yet how much will be available on gear, for example. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. And as always, stay tuned and stay safe.